where are the Giants heading? They've hired Buster Posey last year, and he's now in his the beginning of his second season as head of the Giants. He's looking for a new manager. The team has 4 veterans now under contract, you might say. I guess you can put Lee as a vet, even though he's really only played 1 full season. But you've got Devers, Chapman, Adames, and Lee all kind of signed, and Webb as your 5 anchors to the roster. Is this a team that is ready to begin competing for a world championship, or do you think they're years away?
I think they're years away, and I think a lot of times, we talk on the channel. We've done it for years, and we have to separate the difference between being a contender and what our fan base hopes for is just to squeeze into that 3rd wild card, or maybe even a 2nd wild card, and really being a contender for a championship. I know the narrative is always, hey, just get in, anything can happen. I mean, that's kind of fool's gold. I mean, for the Giants to compete for a championship, first and foremost, they got to find their manager and find out which direction they're going to go, what type of manager they want, and what type of leader they want. And then they're going to have to construct this team. This roster is, first and foremost, they need to get starting pitching. They have 2 solid starters right now, and that's not going to go real far. The lineup, we've talked ad nauseum about where we think it needs to go as far as batting average and more athletic, more speed, more contact hitters, higher batting averages, all that good stuff. So one step at a time, get the manager in place. We both like Molina. I think we're both open to Hundley. I think we need somebody that kind of takes the bull by its horn, is a little bit younger. We don't need our managers to be like our presidents and really old,
Right.
Can we get some young guys in there, please? And, so first and foremost, it's going to be interesting to see who they get as a manager, and then we'll go from there for the roster.
Okay.
But they're years away to be.
I would agree. I think they're probably 3 years away from really competing. And as I look at this team, what's interesting is the way they built the team. They're kind of in a win now mode, because you got Chapman, who's going to be 33 next year. Adames, I believe, turns 30 next year, but he doesn't seem like he's ascending. If anything, he's maybe plateaued and probably soon to be on the descend. Yeah. And then you have Devers, who's listed at 28. I question whether he really is 28 or not. Any player that comes from the Dominican, I question their age, but let's assume he is 28. He'll be 29 next year. He's got to cut down on strikeouts. He struck out almost 30% of the time as a Giant, where he only struck out about 22.5% as a Red Sox. So I don't know what changed. I don't know if it's because that green monster wasn't there and he decided, well, gosh, I've got to give this thing a ride. I'm swinging for the fences. And that increased his strikeout rate versus just popping a fly ball to left field and either having it go over the wall or off the wall for a double, right? That kind of anchor, that crutch or pacifier is gone when you come to Oracle. So you've got Adames, Chapman, and Devers that strike out a ton. We know Eldridge, if he comes up, he strikes out a ton. Ramos strikes out a ton. Bailey strikes out a ton. Even Casey Schmidt strikes out over 20%. You can't have 7-8 guys in your lineup striking out over 20%. You look at the teams that are, the Blue Jays, they're a contact hitting team and they look good. They create runs. They don't have to rely on the long ball. So, and then you mentioned the pitching. They don't have any pitching. Buster has to go out and add at least 2 starters and probably 3 or 4 bullpen pieces. You're looking at probably at least 6 of the 12 to 13 pitchers on the staff being new next year.
Yeah, and that swing you were talking about with Devers is real, because going back to Willie Mays when he played in the Polo Grounds and he came to Candlestick and he saw how the winds were coming in from left field, he had to adjust his swing and go to right center. So we talk about it quite often. Baseball is just different dimensions and different ballparks, and I think Devers, now having played here for a little while, I think he'll adjust. He's bottom line a really good hitter. My bold move for the Giants would be, and me and you, I think, are on the same page on this, is if somebody would take Chapman off our hands in a trade
Yeah.
and move Devers to third and start Eldridge at first. I know
There you
that's
go.
I know that's a roll of the dice with what Eldridge could bring to the table, but man, if he's even half or three quarters what you think he could be, you got, again, old school power at the corner positions, which the Giants haven't had in a little while.
I have another plan that I would love to see is if you can move Chapman, which it would cost you some money. I think he'd need to be incentivized, and he's not going to let go of that no trade clause easily, being in the second year of, being in California, in the Bay Area where he enjoys. But if somehow you were able to convince him and move off of him, this would be my ultimate plan. Move Casey Schmidt over to third where he's a natural. Go do whatever it takes to trade for Xavier Edwards of Miami and put him at second base. Now You've got a contact hitter at second with speed, hits for average, athletic, steals bases, perfect leadoff guy. Then you bat Jung-Hoo second and start teaching him just, hey, forget trying to be a long ball hitter. Just make contact, learn how to bunt. And then if you can put Eldridge in the corner outfield spot, and if you want to keep Devers at first, move Ramos to a DH where he struggled in the outfield. Now you've got, you got some hitters in there. You're solid at third. Casey's a solid third baseman. Devers, I think, can play first adequately enough. And then you get some athleticism. I think they need a guy like Edwards, ideally. But unfortunately, I don't think the Giants have the what do I want to say? The cupboard seems a little empty. They don't have the
pieces
stock.
to trade.
Yeah, the pieces to trade. But if you can get an Edwards at second and a Quan in left, and and if you had they need guys like Quan and Edwards to set the table. And okay, so then you break up the lineup a little bit. Don't have Chapman anywhere near the middle of the order because Chapman is not the problem. Okay. He becomes a problem because he's on the Giants and he has to be like their star hitter. If Chapman played, for example, for the Dodgers, he would be perfect because they don't have a good third baseman. He would be able to play third base. They would love his defense and they would bat him seventh, and he would be like a very productive seventh place hitter. But because he bats fourth for the Giants, he comes up constantly, him and Adames with runners in scoring position. And if it's not a 2-run, 3-run homer, it's a strikeout and the rally is killed. And you can't keep having that.
No doubt. He's not a middle of the order guy. But at the same time, we see him in spring training and we see how he goes the opposite field and how he actually looks like a competent 260 to 270 hitter when he has that approach. Somehow, when the bell goes off and the games are for real and he feels the pressure to go back to his bad habits and start pulling everything, he goes back to being the 230 hitter and striking out all the time. I just wish someone would get in his ear, the manager, the hitting coach, and say, hey, whatever you do in February and March, do it April through October. Go the opposite way. It's okay. How many times if he had that opposite field approach would he have driven in that guy from third with 0 outs or 1 out, or just hit a fly ball? But he doesn't do it. Whether he's hitting fourth, fifth, sixth, or seventh, he's got to change his approach.
Right. I agree. Now, here's my final thought on the Giants, and we'll move to one of the other Bay Area sports teams, is whoever they bring in as manager, it makes no difference to me who they bring in, because I don't think it will make a bit of difference if they don't get some really good additions to the pitching staff.
Yep.
Because if Ranger Suarez is a free agent, Framber Valdez, there's a couple other guys out there. Adrian Hauser is a guy that would fit this club. You need 2 to 3 starters more. The Giants need to have probably 6 quality starters, and someone can be in the bullpen if they don't crack the top 5. They're going to be used, and you cannot rely on the Kaiwei Tangs, the Tristan Becks, the Keaton Wins, the Mason Blacks. You can't rely on those guys, okay?
Even Birdsong let us down.
Even Birdsong was rough. So it looks like they've got 2.5, maybe 3 pitchers. They got Webb, Ray, and Landon Roop, if he can come back, stay strong. So add to the pitching, because my take is if the Giants don't get enough quality pitching and add some better relievers, that they'll just be another 500 team, because they don't have the horses to carry you on offense. Yes, they can get hot and have a good week or 2 stretch when they're all, the long ball's going, but because they strike out so much, they're going to be that Jekyll and Hyde. They're going to have times where they just can't score because they're striking out too much. And so that's the key to the Giants. And I think if they add pitching and they get a few good starters in the bullpen, they can actually compete for a playoff spot next year. But if not, they will be middle of the pack again.
It's funny. I was thinking about the Giants and how they don't bring up like young guys, and we always get on them for that. And with Birdsong and Wisenhunt, like maybe they knew a little bit more than we did at the end of the day, and I'll tell you why. Because they kind of knew all along that they were, flawed, that they didn't have exactly what it took to be, a major league pitcher, and their trade value would have been better if they had stayed in AAA with all that potential. Once they came up to the majors and kind of got rocked, other teams are like, oh, those guys are not as good as we thought they are. So now the trade value has gone down, and if they did try to move off of them now, they're not going to get back as much as they would have got.
Yeah, that's a good point.